fermenting. And after taking the course and really seeing how people are operating from a professional standpoint, fermenting is a fabulous field, and people are shying away from it because of the fact that we are using germs to create the ferment.
The good bacteria.
Thank you. And so when you were discussing that, you know, that's exactly right. And we could go into a total discussion about that, right, Uma? I mean, it's a field in and of itself. But I noticed in this course that there was not much of a focus in the fermenting. And so it kind of tells me that there's some hesitation there. So my goal is to encourage and empower each of you to want to do more canning, to want to do more dehydrating, to want to understand freezing, and then to also understand about canning, right? Because if you're as old as I am, you probably remember people that canned, and that was a natural process that happened throughout time. And that's also truth for fermenting, because in every culture, and I will next week point out, fermenting was a part of their livelihood, because they didn't have freezing and they didn't have access to the now industrialized world, right? And so here we are now beginning to focus on more fermentation. There's an interest, right? Kombucha is a fermentation. I am making some of the ferments, and I'm doing some of the other things that you'll be able to taste next week, right? So one of the things about fermenting is that, and I don't want to spend too much time on that because that's next week, but you are utilizing the good bacteria, and you're also using things like salt to inhibit the growth of the bacteria while the good bacteria does its thing and creates the ferment. And that ferment, and it's proven, is so good for our digestive system. Yeah. And so I love the fact that ferment is becoming popular. What I hope, though, is that ferment is not just a fad, but that there is an understanding between the medicinal benefits, right, of consumption, because it's a condiment. It's a small portion, and over time has been a small portion of every meal that people had, right?
Yogurt is
Right. Yeah. Yogurt, yeah. And so anyway, you know, this is supposed to be fun. The whole idea of this is post-harvest. You know, I've harvested, and, you know, again, what Josh was saying, the way we harvest has a lot to do with, am I managing my risk? And I'll point over to the village harvest for a minute, which Tula was a part of for a while. And just back history, it was our class in 2014 where Keona and Megan Fox were classmates, and they're the ones that stood out and saw, oh my gosh, look at all that falling fruit, and how can we better use that for a more sustainable, right? And so they created Village Harvest, and it was our group that went out and took that, loaded it up, and it wasn't always in the practice that was pointed out, because we were just starting out and we didn't totally know all these things. But it was the idea, it was a success, and so now all these practices are being utilized, right? Yeah, but the key is there's a whole lot to taking it off and how we transport it, and then what we do with it in the kitchen. So let me give you an app right now that you want to write down and look up. Food Keeper. Just get on your Google Food Keeper app. I can key it up here if you want, but it's foodkeeper.gov. Yeah, we can do that real quick, or we can get to it. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Josh. So this is a great app, and Josh was addressing, hey, some produce you wash before you put it in the fridge, others you don't. Oh my God, how do I know? It's a lot. It's a lot of material. Yeah, you can just do right there. I have it on my phone. I have it on my tablet. I can look and see, okay, so what do I do with those strawberries? And, how am I supposed to do what? Baby food, baked goods, beverages, condiments. You can browse by category. So, it's not like we have to know everything. We could click on one of those, but it'll tell us. It's just like we don't put potatoes we don't necessarily have to click on one unless you want, but at least they know how to access it and exactly what to do. And that's a site where you're going to be able to learn more about the hand washing techniques. Yeah, so you can get back to, Food Keeper app.
Is foodsafety.gov, not foodkeeper.gov?
Well, if you do, you can get it either way. You could Google Food Keeper app. You saw that there were a number of different listings.
Or it's at the government's food safety division or agency, but
yeah,
it's one of the applications.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too off the subject. It's all about the subject. But the point is that Josh was trying to press the point about the harvest, the post-harvest, and then getting it into the kitchen. So it's basically, I harvest it, and then I'm transporting it, and then I'm storing it. So you can kind of think in those three categories, and each one of them is an important stage. Just like, and I don't think that Josh mentioned it, are reusable bags that we tend to carry. Here's my reusable bag. If I go to the farmer's market and I put things in here, do I always wash my bag after I use it? Probably not. Incredibly important. And so that's just, okay, this is an awareness. Let's get a little education, and what I hope is that there's a motivation to say, wow, I'm going to start doing a few things differently, right? And then those begin to change, just an awareness. Well, yeah, I could actually tie my hair back at home. So my husband or wife or whoever walks in and go, who are you? And but it's all about our daily practices, of doing that. Okay, so now we're gonna go through some basic steps of canning. Louisa is the go-to gal. She was one of my instructors, and I asked her for this. Interestingly enough, they do not have a presentation on the dehydrating, freezing, and fermenting, so I'm working with her on that right now. Okay, so why do we preserve? We preserve because we want to enjoy the garden produce all year long, right? We want better flavor through processing. We want to improve our skills, the convenience of having food on hand, and I want to inject that for me as a public health educator. I want people to have different forms of food available during emergency. Tommy Noyes back there and I worked together, and he was in charge of emergency preparedness, and we had to prepare kits for emergency preparedness, and Tommy knows that this was in my kit. These are dehydrated things, right? Papaya and bananas. As a public health educator, would I rather see people with this in their pack, or, nothing against what I'm going to say, Spam and some of the high sodium foods that people would tend to probably have in their pack.
Oh, that.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I can tie all of this back to, you know, other subject areas like emergency preparedness. And I am going to make available to you at the end of next week what we call the Plan 9 for emergency preparedness, because it is important to have food, and you know, it's kind of like not if but when, and that's a whole different subject. But my point here is that we do have choices about how we pack for emergencies, and if I can get more people to start to do some of these practices, then as a public health educator, I feel like, this is great. So it's a sense of satisfaction. I have a little table out there. I'm going to show you and give you some activities that you can take it home and do. There is so many opportunities for us to connect with young people and to help them develop these skills, and just the empowerment that people feel. Improve nutrition, and can control for special diet needs. I'm going to go back to that subject area in a little bit. So here we go. So they are showing freezing, dehydrating, canning, but they don't show you the subject of fermenting. And I just will keep going back to that. So here's a little quiz for you. You can just jot down 1 through 8, and I'm not going to ask you to answer them out loud. Let's just read through them, and you can put a true or false, and throughout our little session, we'll try to answer those, okay? So 1, food preservation guidelines and methods do change. True or false?
True.
Oh, you're telling me out loud. Well, you can just write it down, okay? Yeah. So you answer to yourself. Number 2, the last time major changes came out was in 1988. Just put a T or an F. Number 3, a sealed jar is a safe jar. Number 4, jams and jellies do not need to be water bathed. Number 5, it is okay to alter ingredients just a little bit when canning. And number 6, adding extra starch, flour, or thickener to a recipe is fine if it seems too thin for your liking. And number 7, rings must remain on the jars during storage. And number 8, all bottles and lids must be sterilized before using. So we'll, throughout the quiz, throughout the little slideshow, answer all of them. And don't you love it? I've been doing this way for years and no one has died yet. That may be true, but, and yes, Roberta, it is an older person that's in there. And that's because over the years, it has been a dying art and science, as a lot of things. And Josh pointed out in his presentation, or I think Roberta pointed out, that there was an older face that was on the slide earlier when you were dealing with, what were you dealing with, Josh? The stats? So Josh and I were in conversation before you came in. It is typical for older people to keep things in the refrigerator too long. And tomorrow I will be speaking for Older Americans Month, and that is one of the things that we are working on, is not letting our food sit too long in the refrigerator. And as we get older, we tend to lose our ability to go, is it good, is it not? So trying to get on a practice of writing, when did I put that in there? Or learning to make just what you can eat in the next few days. These are big deals. These are really, really big deals. And when Josh was talking about 1 in 6 people, have, food sickness, food illness, the numbers are huge. And there is a window of time for all of us, that food has to stay hot, food has to stay cold. And it is literally between 2 and 4 hours, and Josh is so right, it doubles and doubles and doubles. And so that has been a takeaway for me. I am single, I live alone, and just being able to say, okay, I'm gonna cook this, and I'm gonna have it eaten in the next 2 days. Or like Josh was saying, which is a good practice, freezing it. Get your portion and then freezing it, right? And these may seem simple, but we are all, may I use the term, guilty of this. This is all something that we all need to go, ooh, wow. You're speaking to me, because we're speaking to all of us. So back to her, point is, no, Granny, you cannot fudge that recipe. You gotta give it exactly like it is. So there are tried and true recipes, and you and I have to follow them. And I'm one of those that, I don't follow recipes. And I can remember in the 70s going, damn, that's a lot of sugar in there. Well, sugar inhibits bacteria growth. You gotta have that sugar in there. 6 cups or whatever. Again, I'm a public health educator, and now I'm going, man, diabetes and blah, blah, blah. But if you're gonna can, you have to follow the recipe. So food safety is our #1 priority. Canning is not cooking. Very different. Canning, successful cooking, good tasting food with expected consistency. Successful canning means control of potentially harmful microorganisms. Josh did a great job of going over that. Use current tested recipes. So we know it has to be current, it's been tested, and what does that bottom one say? Control your creativity when you are canning. Right, be creative, Rachelle, when you're cooking something, not when you're canning something. Well said. So, more safety. A sealed jar does not mean a safe jar. Very important. You've got to have enough heat, you've got to have enough time, and that is the difference which we will see between a water bath and a pressure canner. Certain foods have to be in a pressure canner, you'll see why. Others can be in a water bath, okay? Let's start at the beginning. Factors affecting processing times. The acid content of food. And we've learned a little bit about pH, right? And so foods have to be a certain acid in order for foods, like I said, to be water bathed or canned. The density of food. And so when it talks about cutting something 1 inch, it's got to be 1 inch. The altitude, where are you at when you're doing your canning? Altitude changes the time when water will boil, which of course makes a difference. The starting temperature of food. Whether you use quarts or pints. So these are examples. These are certified jars that are acceptable for canning. We are not supposed to use just any glass canner, right? Which, hey. So here it talks about what is an acid food, what is an alkaline food. And so you can see that if it is between, let's see, when I look at this, I get confused. If it is 4.6 or higher, then you've got to use the pressure canner. So this, thank goodness Pat brought in, this is a pressure canner, which shows a gauge and a vent. This closes up, it goes to 240 degrees. You have to run these things for 90 minutes. 90 minutes at that constant temperature in order for a low acid food to cook through the contents. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, so we learned from Josh the reality of botulism, and that you and I, when we can, that is high possibility. And that's why we use either a bath or we use a
Can I see the
can.
previous slide once, just a second?
Pardon me?
Previous slide.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So isn't it?
So if it is a
4.6
low,
or
if it is a low acid food, we've got to use a pressure canner. If it is a high acid food, you can water bath it at 212, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think this,
Got it.
you know, this is Luisa's, but it, to me, it kind of throws things off. Yeah, or it looks different to me. But basically, if it is low acid, it has to be in the pressure canner, 240 degrees for 90 minutes. A low acid food example, something that I had never canned before was fish. And which is low acid food, that's got to be in a pressure canner, right? Yeah, right. And tomato is kind of iffy. That's why I'm going to show you a fermented salsa, which kind of takes that away. I don't own a canner. I don't want to own a canner. I don't want all that stuff. So for me, you know, that's one of the reasons also I go to the fermenting. Okay, so we already did that one. So here we go. Again, I think Josh kind of addressed this, but this is where we get ourselves in trouble. If it is a low acid food, if there is moisture and there is no oxygen, and we all can remember being told, if your can is bulging, you throw it out. And in this class, I mean, I was frightened when I learned, I mean, they are saying, you seal that bag up, you know, I mean, they don't even want you throwing it in the trash can. I mean, it's just got that, it's that toxic. Yeah, so anyway, it is important that we understand we can die from this. I mean, die. You know, so here it just explains again the difference between a water bath and a pressure canner. I didn't bring in a water bath, but it's just typically a large can. So here it shows the importance of, you know, how heat goes in and how important it is. If you're working with a thick substance, again, when it says to cut 1-inch cubes, right? And I was one that, you know, didn't really understand that relationship between, hey, if it tells me 1 inch, there's a reason. Now I really get it. So for some reason, this is kind of odd, the way my machine is, or doing my slides here.
Rachelle, one question.
Yes, oh, so sorry.
So when you're talking about the baths and the canners, is that after you've done all the cutting and the mixing, you put it into the jar?
Yes.
You do the bath?
Yes, that is correct. And honestly, this thing is coming up on my screen different. I don't know.
You reference the left side one.
Pardon me?
It's giving you a heads up of your next slide on your screen.
Yes?
Isn't that right?
No, it's showing me that, come look. I mean, this is kind of odd to me, the way this is showing up on
See
here.
a picture or something?
I'm not sure what it's
So
doing.
that slide is this one right here, and this
Yeah.
is your next. And this
No,
is,
it's the same one.
no, this is your animation. That's why.
Okay.
No, it's showing your animations coming up. So if you had like a bullet point, it's coming. Yeah. So.
Okay, well, thank you, young man. That is exactly why I said young man. So what are you wanting me to do? Just this one right here, Josh, or both of them? Tell me this again.
No, or just talk. Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just talk. Were you gonna do this slide?
I'm just trying to go to the next slide.
Okay. This one then.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, but these slides seem out of sequence. That's why I'm saying to you. I mean, something doesn't seem right to me.
No. I mean, whatever
Okay.
slide you got, that's still on the computer. You just have animations.
Well, okay, but typically, that's not the way my slide showed up for me, is what I'm saying to you. Yeah, it didn't come out in things like this, because I don't need that much detail, right? That's my point.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, no problem, gang. Let's just see. Yeah, no, seriously, I need you to come back here for just a minute.
No, keep pressing right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but I don't want to go into that much detail, otherwise we'll be here.
That's your slide.
Okay,
I don't know
okay.
slide. Do you have another slideshow? Did you have another slideshow, Rachelle?
My slideshow is this, but it did not break up, is what my point.
That's
Okay,
your computer, so I don't know.
okay, so, did you open it up from my desktop?
No, it was already opened on your computer.
Okay, sorry you guys. I just don't want to, because your question, is very appropriate, and it's a part of what I'm trying to get to. Yeah, so, I mean, basically, yeah, okay, so let me go back here, gang, just for a minute here. Okay, so we're good. So basically, we said altitude. Altitude will change your boiling time. I did not want to go into anything more than that. So your processing time is determined. Okay, we're not going to spend too much because we're here and we already know that if whatever your instructions are, that's what your boiling time is, and you switch it. That's too much information for this class, is what I'm getting at. Okay, so this is important for your question.
Excuse me, can I see the previous slide again? Because there is a piece of information in there that may be useful for people. So 10 minutes for about every 3,000 foot elevation, is that good? Like
Mhm.
adding 10 minutes more,
Yes,
yeah?
right.
So it says 3,000 to 6,000 feet. So what you're saying is adding 10 minutes to the boiling time up to 6,000 feet elevation is safe enough.
Correct.
Okay.
So as altitude changes, your boiling temperature changes, okay? And so that's a math that you can take a look at, but I assure you, Uma, that at this point, most of you are not going to just jump into pressure canning and
Right.
cooking. Right, exactly. So I did not want to overload people with this kind of detailed information. My message to you is that water bath is associated with high acid foods. Water canning, pressure canning, is associated with low acid foods. Then once you get into your canning, there is a difference based on your altitude, how you would do your canning. right? And I think keeping it that basic and simple is important for you right now. Because again, I don't think any of you are going to jump out and just go into the pressure canning.
And most
Right.
people are under this elevation anyways, right?
Yes, yeah.
We're okay.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of like an overview. Yes, the material, that information is when you get to that point, but what I am hoping to do is get you intrigued about this technique so you'll want to learn more. Yeah. And I apologize if I didn't make that clear. So here what I want you to know is there is a difference between the type of water bathing, and you water bath when? High acid or low acid? High acid, right. So you have a choice of doing what we call a raw pack or a hot pack. And you can see that a raw pack is when you use your food raw, right? And you are putting warm or hot water, boiling water, into your jar, okay? More suitable for vegetables processed in a pressure canner. And fruits have high air content which floats in jars. That's too much information. All I want you to know is there's two types. You can do a raw pack and you can do a hot pack. That means I am going to cook my fruits and vegetables before I pop them in the jar. And it makes a difference. Changes color sometime. I want you to know you have an option. You can do a cold pack or a hot pack. That's fun to know. So that's Kalen on the left, and he is working with, and he is up in Waipa. He is working with a group of interns going through the class, just like you are. This is a water bath, and the recommendation is work with one batch at a time. You drop that into your water bath after you've packed it, yes, and then you begin your cooking time. Very simple. So, exactly what I said, don't veer from those instructions, and those instructions are included when you buy jars, when you buy your different canning equipment. You can see he is looking at that and he is following it. So there's a method to preparing your jars and your lids. One of the practices that's important is wiping the inside of the jar to make sure that that's not an added contaminant, right? And there is a list of, if you have a jelly or a jam, it's 1/4 of an inch, and different vegetables, 1/2 of an inch. Those are all available to us on the instructions. Remove the air bubbles, you know, just to show you, hey, this is doable, but you know, it is a big deal. Tells you exactly how to do it. You put your warm lid and screw band. Shows you lids needed to be heated in water. I believe this is one of your questions. Or simmering water. You don't always have to boil your lids. Here you go. Like this is a lid, right? And you would pop it in there. You would place your lid on. This is your ring band. Bingo. And then that goes in, yes.
And you also need to sterilize the jars, right?
Not all jars have to be sterilized, and that is one of the questions. Then the definition of what is a sterilized jar, they all need to be cleaned. You know, hot soapy water. We put them through the 3 sink, yeah, but not necessarily sterilized. Yeah. So I talked about headspace, jam and jelly 1/4 of an inch, fruits and tomatoes, and then low acid foods. Why do you think the low acid foods need so much room?
Rusty lid.
Pardon me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because when you heat them up under pressure, they're gonna burst.
You put this under 240 pounds of pressure, and it is, yeah, cooking that food and it is coming out that seal. Exactly. Great answer. So as I showed you the jars and the lids, you want to make sure you don't put it on too tight. It says do not readjust the lid after processing. I'll see if it gets to another point that I want to make. This was our class right here. You can see we've got our hair tied back. They are making a jam, a jelly. Each day of the class we got into the certified kitchen. That is the YPA Foundation. So this is your water bath. Any pot, as long as deep enough to have 2 to 3 inches of water, covers the tops of your jars as it boils, must have a flat bottom and cannot be more than 4 inches wider than the diameter of your electric coil burner. Jar rack to keep the jars off the bottom, so you put your jars in there, then you put them in, and after you allow your jars to sit for 5 minutes before you remove, and then you let your jars, let's see, fill your canner halfway, 140 for raw pack, 180 for hot pack. All of this is instructions. Load fill jars. Add more boiling water until at least 1 inch over the top of the jars, which we said. You cover, you turn the heat to the highest setting until the water boils. Then you are going to let your jars sit for 24 hours. Add more, let's see, remove the jars from the counter, and they've got to be separated. You let them sit for 24 hours and your lid should be sealed. Sometimes you'll hear a little ping. Have any of you ever just pinged? You know it has sealed in there. One of the things is if the jar doesn't completely seal, you have a choice. You can reprocess it, or the other option is put it in the refrigerator and cook it and eat it. Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, if you've done a jam or a jelly that didn't work, throw it over some ice cream or angel food cake, you know, whatever. I wouldn't be interested in reprocessing it. I mean, I would just consume it. So here's the pressure canner method. Again, this is Pat's, and I think Pat said you've had this stored away, right? So this is the gauge, and this is the vent, and there's a pressure cooker that Pat also brought that's out there. And so, you know, you can see, most of you know what a pressure cooker is. You know, most of us have seen that. But you're supposed to let this vent run for 10 minutes before the gauge. And I was asking Tom and Pat about this. Doesn't this thing come off because your gauge is supposed to be checked every year? I mean, you know, this thing runs under pressure. And then, you know, the gasket needs to be checked. Yeah, so I thought maybe you guys would like to see the pressure. So, yeah, I mean, let me just see the vent port. Let the steam vent for 10 minutes, then place the weight on, allow it to pressurize, and you begin when recommended pressure is reached. Different pressures for different foods, that's really too much information for what you want to know. That is some of the newer pressure canners. They're about $250. I mean, they're an investment. So you have to kind of decide, hey, do I want to do this? You know, there is a cost. Maybe some of you would want to go up to the certified kitchen, that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Excuse me, does the certified kitchen provide the pressure cookers?
Absolutely, absolutely. They are fully, yeah, equipped. And there are companies that sell products that use. Tula?
It's not $25 per person, so like if you wanted to do it with friends.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, it's $25 per hour.
per hour.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying you would want to know what you're doing. You would want to get in there. You would want to make it timely for you. Yeah, so Josh and I tried to see if we could get something going for the class to go out there, but Thursdays is is their poi making day, and
I don't mind boy, they like boy.
yeah. But it's chaos there. I think they meet about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. I mean, they start
Aren't
early.
there two kitchens now?
Out there.
There's the old kitchen and the new kitchen?
Oh, I've only seen the new kitchen, so I don't know.
Well, they use the old kitchen for the poi making.
Oh, yes, okay, so that's an old kitchen, that's an old kitchen. So you're right, there is, but I'm not sure if they come over to do over in some of the new place, the new kitchen.
I don't know, I don't think so.
I'll have to ask him that question. That's a great question. Yeah, so basically when the time is off, you turn it off, you let it cool down, just makes sense. You don't try to force the cool down. I mean, this is a huge pressurized, tool. So again, that's kind of a lot of information right there. And I mentioned about being able to make sure that it seals, fun. I gave you the tip, if it didn't seal, if you know it didn't seal, either eat it or you can reprocess it, totally up to you. At the end, we do remove our metal bands. These are reusable if we all take care of them. You wash them, you make sure they're dry, otherwise they will become corroded. You know, these typically are not reused. You know, this is what you store. You would store your things just like that.
The lids are not reusable, but the jars are?
Absolutely, your jars are reusable. Yes, definitely. These you would toss out because it makes sense. You would lose your sealability, right? But if you take care of these, you definitely can use them. As I said, you're storing your jars. So you can see why something like this would work really well in an emergency preparedness situation, being able to have things that are already cooked.
I'm sorry, this may be silly, but why would you lose the sealability? I didn't understand why the sealability will be lost.
It's rubber, and once
Oh,
you use
there's
it.
rubber.
Oh yeah, and I can pass that, yeah, see that? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I could have passed that around. Yeah.
It's damaged when you process.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah, right, exactly, yeah, so people can see.
That makes sense.
Yes, no, good question, Uma. Okay, so what about canning salsa? I kind of mentioned that. You make sure you use scientifically tested recipes, and you only change, and this is part of one of your questions, you can only change the lemon juice for vinegar. You can change a few of the spices. You can reduce the number of peppers but not increase green pepper or onion, and make sure that it's proportionately. Why is that? Because that's back to that grandma slide. Don't fudge with your recipes. So here is, you want to do not use a recipe from a friend of a friend of a friend or from your favorite relative unless it's been tested. We do not want you to take chances. You change the thickness by adding more tomatoes, cornstarch. That's one of our questions. Cannot make those kind of adjustments. Do not add more vegetables. And you know, some of our personalities are like that. You know, just some of us are driven to experiment, and other people, you know, and I know they're in the class, man, they will follow that recipe to the T. You want to not leave out your acid, which is so important. So what do you do with your favorite salsa recipe? Make it fresh. And yeah, so it's obviously tomato is an iffy product. So let's answer the questions. Food preservation guidelines and methods do change. What is the answer?
True.
Yes. And the last time major changes came out was in 1988. No, false. Yeah. A sealed jar is a safe jar.
True.
Actually, that's false. Yeah, right. Yeah, because hey, that could be botulism, right? Just because it, right. Jams and jellies need to be water bathed.
Yes.
Yes. It's okay to alter ingredients just a little bit when canning. Right, but it's true and false. You see how it says okay to change types of peppers in salsa. So that was a trick question.
So it's both.
True and false, you think?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it depends, exactly. Adding extra starch, flour, or thickener to a recipe before canning it is fine if it seems too thick or thin for your liking. False. Rings can be removed from the jars during storage. Yes. Right? All bottles and lids must be sterilized before using. No, they do not have to all be. This is true only for items using processing times that are 10 minutes or less. Right. So the idea again was to just, yes, there we go, we got it. I'm so sorry I have not used this way. So here are some resources for you. National Center for Home Food, Complete Guide to Home Canning, the Ball Canning Company, and the Washington State University. And then what I want to do is I want to step outside with you because I want to show you an activity. Each of you will be able to take it home and do whatever you want with it. And so yeah, any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Someone sent me a bunch of smoked salmon that they made and canned,
Yes?
and I'm
You hesitate.
I'm afraid to eat it.
And you know what? That's a fabulous question, and that's something that I wanted to just address. Every reason for us to be, concerned about somebody's, you're talking that they did the smoking? I mean, that they canned
They
it?
did the catching, the smoking, and the
Yeah,
canning.
yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's your decision.
But is there any way to test it?
I'll
It's
test
like
it.
jars.
Not that I know of. But everybody's comfort zone. It's a great question, and everybody's comfort zone is different. And I'm just going to tell you something that happened in our class. One of the students had a number of canned things that had been given to her as gifts that she just had too much on her shelf. I took them and I consumed them, and I'm still here because I trusted